Have you ever been turned down for credit because you have no credit? Have you had credit issues in the past so you haven't even tried to get credit in some time now? What about checking your credit score for the first time on one of those free websites? When you saw your score, did you just log out and say forget it? Oh, and what about that credit repair service that you paid several $100s or more and saw little improvement to your credit score? Well, I am here today to tell you that you don't have to settle for feeling stuck with any of those situations, and you can build and repair your credit yourself without paying anyone, simply by understanding more about how the system works. Now, this lesson will be broken up into two parts for the sake of time, so please be sure to stay tuned for part 2, which will air next week. The first thing you have to do is get over the stigma that you are a bad person because you have a less than desirable credit score. There are a lot of good people with bad credit scores. Perhaps you were out of work for a while due to an illness. Maybe you didn't have insurance. Or even if you did have insurance, your portion of the bills added up to more than you could handle. Medical bills are still one of the top reasons people have poor credit scores. Now, let's also be totally honest and admit that we have all made some bad decisions with our money at some time in our life. Sometimes those decisions can have long-term consequences, but none of that means that you should have to serve a life sentence when it comes to your credit score. So let's tackle this thing head on and get you back on track to having a kind of score that you can be proud of. One that will save you money for years to come and open doors that have previously been closed to you. How does that sound? First, pull your credit report from all 3 credit agencies. That's Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Now, you are entitled by law to get these reports for free once a year by going to annualcreditreport.com. I'll leave a link to this site below. Now, you won't get a credit score with these reports, but seeing what is or isn't on your credit report is the most important thing. You can get your credit score by signing up for one of these free services such as Credit Karma or Credit Sesame. Just remember that these sites use what is known as your Vantage score and not your FICO score. There are slight differences in how the 2 scores are calculated. If you use online banking, a lot of banks now offer your FICO score for free, so that may be another option for getting your credit score. Once you have your credit reports in hand, first take a look at your payment history on any and all accounts that are listed. This is the section that will show if you are or have been more than 30 days late with any payments. If you are currently behind on any payments, get them caught up as soon as possible and keep them caught up. Your payment history makes up 35% of your credit score, so this area could be hurting you a lot. If you had some late payments in the past but are currently in good standing, just make sure you keep it that way. Those previous late payments will become less significant over time. If you don't have any payment history at all in this section because you've never had credit in your name, or you had problems in the past and you haven't had any active credit in a while, this is probably what is killing your credit score. This is also where the I can't get credit because I have no credit comes into play. If this is your situation, then I have good news for you. There is a simple fix to this problem that will boost your credit score tremendously. What is it? Find a friend or relative that has a good credit history and a credit card, preferably one that they pay off every month or at least keep a low balance. Ask that person if they would be willing to add you as an authorized user on that card. Now, you may want to explain to them that you don't want or need an actual card to be sent to you and that you won't be making any charges on their account. What you want is for their good payment history to show up on your credit report. Now, depending on your previous history and their current history, this single step could boost your credit score by nearly 200 points, possibly more. Now, obviously, there has to be a great deal of mutual trust involved, so choose your candidate carefully before popping the question. Please make sure that the person that you ask this favor of actually has a good credit history with the card that they're going to add you to. Remember, once this is done, their history becomes your history. As soon as the change is reported to the credit bureaus, it will be added to your credit report. Depending on how you are tracking your credit score, you could see the change almost instantly, or it may take up to 1 month, but it will happen very quickly. Once you see the change reflected in your credit score, you will also see new offers for credit cards appear on your profile if you're using one of the free sites that I mentioned before. Your next goal is to get a new card in your own name. Credit Sesame usually lists some cards that you could be approved for, and they sometimes give you the approval odds for each card offer. I will tell you though that it is not a perfect system. There are other factors that underwriters consider other than just your credit score. For instance, debt to income ratio. When you get added as an authorized user on someone's credit card, you get the advantage of their good payment history. The other thing that comes over with that good history is the debt balance. Now that doesn't mean that you are responsible for paying that debt, but that balance will show up on your credit report as if it were yours. That's why I said to try to choose someone who pays their balance in full every month, or at least keeps a low balance. Because when you apply for your new card, that balance will be included in your debt to income calculation, and your new card could be declined because of that. So before you apply for a new card, check with that person who was kind enough to add you as an authorized user, and make sure they haven't made any recent or large purchases with that card. Now, if getting someone to add you as an authorized user is not an option for you, there is another method that you can use to build history and improve your credit score. You can apply for a secured credit card. These cards are usually easy to obtain because it is partially secured by your own money. The credit limit is usually very low to start out, and maybe that's why there seems to be a negative stigma attached to these cards. But if used correctly, this can still be an excellent way to build credit. The way a secured card typically works is like this. First, you need to have a bank account that you can link to the card. The card issuer will then draft your account for an initial deposit in return for issuing you a card with a preset limit. For example, they may require a $50 deposit for a $200 credit limit. Now, a lot of people would say, what am I going to do with a credit card that only has a $200 limit? Well, that's really all you need to get started building credit. Most card issuers will let you pay a higher deposit for a higher limit, and most will return your deposit after 6 months of on-time payments. I have even seen some that will return your deposit after only 4 months. Your payments get reported to the credit bureaus just like a regular card, and after the probation period, your deposit is returned and it becomes a regular credit card. In most cases, you can usually ask for your credit limit to be increased at that time also. Now, here's a very important point to remember about using credit cards to build credit, and it doesn't matter if it's a secured card or an unsecured card. Never, ever charge more than 30% of your card limit in any billing cycle. Let me be clear. Your reported balance in any billing cycle should never be more than 30% of the card limit. If you do, you will exceed your credit utilization threshold and negatively impact your credit score. If you are starting out with this secured card that has a $200 limit, then your balance should never exceed $60. Use the card each month for something that you would normally buy anyway, such as gas for your car, but never exceed that 30% threshold. Also, make sure your balance is paid each month and your statement shows a zero balance before making new charges. Over time, you will build good payment history, keep your utilization below 30%, and get in the habit of paying your balance in full each month. By doing this, you will be positively impacting the two most heavily weighted areas of your credit score, payment history and credit utilization. Together, these two areas make up 65% of your credit score. Now let's focus on the credit utilization section a little more as a method to improve your credit score. Maybe you already have several credit cards and you're making regular payments, but your score is still lower than you would like. Go back to your credit report or your credit card statements and compare your current balance against your credit limit for each card. If any of your balances are above 30% of your credit limit, this is hurting your score. Develop a plan to get all of your balances below the 30% and keep them there. As soon as you get below the 30%, you will see your score improve. Your next step should be to get them all to zero. If you haven't watched my video on debt freedom, I would highly suggest that you do so. The steps that I have outlined here are some of the most important and most efficient ways to improve or build your credit score. In part 2 of this series, I will teach you how to deal with collections, charge-off, and any inaccuracies on your credit report. Start putting those behaviors into practice now and watch your scores improve. Stay safe, and as always, until next time, behave well.